Welcome back to Behavioral Econ 101, everyone. Grab a seat and settle in, because today's explainer dives into a longitudinal case study that honestly might completely change how you view every single paycheck you earn from here on out. We're going to break down the lives of two identical engineers to reveal how these really subtle psychological traps, not, massive lottery windfalls or catastrophic failures, actually dictate wealth. We're talking about two guys earning the exact same $120,000 salary, living in the exact same city, who somehow end up with a massive $1.4 million difference in their net worth 20 years later. It's an absolutely incredible look at the invisible taxes of living large.
All right, here is our roadmap for today's lecture. We're going to cover the $1.4 million anomaly, the behavioral divergence, the actual math of reality, the hedonic treadmill trap, and finally, the ultimate luxury, which is time. Let's get right into it.
Part 1, the $1.4 million anomaly. We're kicking off our case study with a situation that completely defies common sense expectations about high salaries. So let's meet our subjects for today, Jake and Marcus. We're starting with perfectly identical baselines here. Both guys are exactly 30 years old, they live in the exact same city, and they both just landed these really great senior engineering roles, earning a gross salary of exactly $120,000 a year. So after taxes, they are both taking home right around $7,500 a month. To their families, their friends, and pretty much society at large, these guys look like they've finally made it, right? They're basically on top of the world.
But if we fast forward 20 years into the future, we find this staggering $1.4 million difference in their bank accounts. One is completely financially independent, and the other is literally one medical emergency or company downsizing away from total disaster. And you know what the crazy part is? Neither of them won the lottery. Neither of them became some kind of stock market genius or crypto billionaire. They both stayed employed, they both contributed to their retirement accounts, and they both worked really hard. So, how in the world does this happen?
Well, that brings us to part 2, the behavioral divergence. Let's unpack how this wealth gap builds by looking at the initial micro decisions that set them on completely different trajectories.
It really all starts right here, the moment they get those first big paychecks. Jake does what, frankly, most of us do. He figures, hey, I earn $120K, so I should probably live like someone who earns $120K. He scales his lifestyle right up to match his income. He signs a lease on a $3,500 a month luxury apartment, takes on a $700 car payment, and just loads up on premium subscriptions. Marcus, on the other hand, takes a totally different path. He intentionally chooses a comfortable but much more modest apartment and a reliable used car. He effectively caps his total living expenses at exactly $5,000 a month.
When you put their savings rates side by side, the contrast is super interesting. Jake is actually doing okay by conventional standards. He's still saving 5% of his income, which definitely beats the national average of 3.6%. So in his mind, he's doing fine because his bank balance isn't zero. But Marcus, because of that strict $5,000 living expense cap, he is able to automate the remaining $2,500 straight into his investments every single month. That is a massive 25% of his gross pay, folks.
This initial divergence becomes absolutely critical when we factor in human behavior over time. Every year, both of our engineers get a 5% raise at work. Marcus keeps his expenses capped, maybe adjusting just a tiny bit for inflation, and funnels every single extra dollar of that raise directly into his brokerage account. Jake falls right into what we call lifestyle creep. It's that silent behavioral trap where your standard of living expands to match an increase in your discretionary income. For Jake, a 5% raise just gets absorbed into a slightly nicer car, eating out more often, maybe taking flashier vacations. He thinks he's just enjoying the fruits of his hard work, but he's paying a massive, invisible tax.
Now let's move to part 3, the math of reality. We're going to look at exactly how these behavioral patterns compound over the course of 10 and 20 years. The math here is incredibly unforgiving.
So by year 10, both men are 40 years old, and their salaries have climbed to nearly $190,000. This perfectly illustrates the sheer power of capped expenses. Because Marcus kept his budget relatively flat against inflation, he is now investing nearly $6,000 every single month. Assuming a standard 7% average return, his portfolio is sitting at roughly $540,000. Meanwhile, Jake's lifestyle has crept all the way up to match his new, higher salary. He moved into a bigger house, and his fixed costs have absolutely exploded. So even though he earns way more money now, he feels just as tight financially as he did at 30. His 5% savings rate has only built a portfolio of about $110,000. He's winning on the surface, but he's losing the actual game of financial freedom. Then we hit year 20. They're both 50 years old now, and the mathematical reality is just brutal. Marcus's consistent automation and his total refusal to expand his lifestyle have allowed compound interest to go absolutely nuclear. His portfolio has hit $1.8 million, meaning he secured total financial independence. Jake's portfolio, on the other hand, is sitting at $400,000. Now, on a really high salary, that might sound okay to some, but Jake's expenses have crept up to an astonishing $10,000 a month. He desperately needs that massive salary just to sustain his extreme burn rate.
Let's explore part 4, the hedonic treadmill trap. Because you could definitely look at this and argue, well, hey, Jake actually enjoyed his money way more over those 20 years, while Marcus just lived this boring, deprived life. But let's look at what behavioral economics actually tells us about human happiness. Have any of you ever bought a brand new phone, absolutely loved it for a week, and then completely forgot it was even new? Yeah, that's the hedonic treadmill in action. It's our psychological tendency to adapt almost instantly to a higher lifestyle or new luxuries, and then just return straight back to our baseline level of happiness. Jake doesn't actually feel any happier in his new $5,000 a month house than he did back in his old $2,500 a month apartment. He just feels way more stressed out, because the stakes of maintaining his current life are infinitely higher. Because his fixed costs have bloated so dramatically up to $10,000 a month, Jake needs roughly $120,000 a year just to survive. To safely retire and generate that kind of income, Jake would need a $3 million portfolio, and at his current, relatively low savings rate, he won't hit that for another 25 years. He has literally built a luxurious life that he is now a full-on financial prisoner to.
Which brings us to our final section, part 5, the ultimate luxury, time. The absolute crucial point here for you all to understand is exactly what Marcus was buying with his seemingly boring restraint.
He wasn't actually depriving himself. He was using a very specific 3-step system. Step 1, cap the lifestyle. Step 2, automate the raises. And step 3, get out of the way and let compound growth take over. He only really needed intense discipline for a few years early on to set the system up. After that, he just removed the friction and let the math work for him in the background while he went about enjoying his life.
So what does that get him? $72,000. That is the annual amount Marcus can safely withdraw at a standard 4% withdrawal rate from his $1.8 million portfolio. And because his lifestyle is capped and he doesn't have these massive bloated expenses, that $72,000 easily covers all of his needs. It completely allows him to send in his retirement email at age 50 entirely on his own terms. I want to leave you with this foundational truth for the class today. Marcus isn't depriving himself. He's buying the most expensive luxury on earth, which is time. The reality is that the math really doesn't care about the excitement of your premium subscriptions. It doesn't care about your neighbor's opinions of your shiny new car. It strictly cares about the sequence of your actions. Class, I'm going to leave you with this final thought to consider about your own impending financial decisions as you step out into the real world. The real difference between Jake and Marcus wasn't their salary, it was the creep. So ask yourself, are you building a life you constantly have to escape from, or are you building a life you can easily walk away from? All right, class dismissed. I will see you all in the next explainer.